What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to show you how to optimize your CSS with Purge CSS. We'll specifically be looking at Tailwind CSS because Tailwind produces rather large CSS files. However, this can apply to any of your projects and any of your CSS. We'll take a look at both Laravel projects using Laravel Mix and Vue projects using the Vue CLI. So let's start with the Laravel project here. And I have this project, which is a list or sort of a home for all the Tailwind screencasts and examples I've done. So I have one for Twitter, YouTube, WP Pusher, and Resolute. And if you click on it, it just goes to that example that I did. And each of these have their own CSS file. So let's go ahead and take a look at the size of the CSS file. So this one in particular, just this page, it's pretty simple. This one's called list CSS, and as you can see, it's 342.5 kilobytes. So before we use Purge, let's go ahead and see how we can reduce this file size. So let me go into my project here, and let me just make sure the Webpack is set up. Webpack mix file is set up correctly, and yep, it's still using that CSS file. And we don't need this browser sync because we're not going to be doing development here. We're just going to be doing production builds. So that file size is actually the development build. I'm not using production. So the first thing we can do is just do an npm run production. And this should minify the CSS and save on file size. So let's see if that works. So now if you check our file size, then yeah, it went down from 342 to 248. So that's some savings there. So another thing we can do is, if you go into the Tailwind docs here, there's a section for controlling file size. And one suggestion is to limit the color palette that you're using. So for this particular one, I know I'm not using a lot of colors. So let's get rid of a few of them. So if we go into our Tailwind JS, look for colors, and let me just get rid of, I'm pretty sure I'm not using indigo and purple. I think I'm using teal, so we'll leave that. So let me just comment all of this out. And what was the file size again? It was 248. And let's do another npm run production, and let's see how much file savings we get. Okay, so you can actually see here it's down to 228. And there it is, just so you can double check. So you can continue to do that with colors as well as other options in Tailwind, like the responsive queries. Like right here, you can get rid of these if you're not using them, and that will continue to save size. But for me personally, that's kind of too much to think about. I don't want to remove something and then later on have to put it back in. So that's where using a tool to do this for you comes in handy. So if you go back to the documentation, there is a section for Purge CSS, which is what we'll look at next, right here. So as you can see, what Purge does is it takes a look at all the code, and you have to specify that in the config. And then it compares it against your outputted CSS and removes all the CSS classes and rules that you are not using. And it greatly saves file space. So let's go ahead and try to use this, and let's see what kind of file size savings we get. So as you can see, it's using these two packages, glob all and Purge CSS Webpack plugin. So let's go ahead and pull these in before we start. Okay, so npm install this, and the other one is called glob all. And what glob does is it just allows you to select files using this ** syntax. Okay, now let's copy this, go into our Webpack file, and space that in here. And let's grab this. As you can see, this is commented. So this section just allows you to use special characters in class names because Tailwind uses colons and slashes. So let's put that above the PostCSS call. So right here, let's paste that in. And then here's this section where Purge CSS is doing its magic. I'm going to grab all this and I'm going to paste that in just under here. So as you can see, it only works in production, and it is looking at all your blade files and looking at all your view files to build up that class list that it needs to compare against your final CSS. And this Tailwind extractor, like I just said, is for these special characters. So now, if we set that up correctly, let's just do another npm run production. So right now our file size is at 227, 228. And let's see what kind of savings we get. And there you go. We get 11.6 kilobytes, which is huge in terms of savings. We went from 228 down to 11.6. And let's just double check if this still works. So back to here, and let me just hard refresh, and it still works. Cool. Now, if you want an even easier way, all this code can be wrapped into just one chained method onto the mix here. So there's actually a package for that by Spotty called Laravel Mix Purge CSS. And all you have to do is, like I said, just chain on this method, and it just wraps all that code up. So let's go ahead and install this, and let's use it for one of my other projects. So let me just install that. Okay, let me require it in. So back to our Webpack, let's require it up here. And I'm going to comment these two out since we don't need them. And we just comment out this other stuff and all this stuff. And we just have to chain this method on. So let me just paste that in here. And if I did this correctly, like I said, I'm going to do it on another project. So let's do it on this Resolute project. So 342 kilobytes. That's this one over here. So it's 342 kilobytes. Let me just change my Webpack file. So back to Webpack. Let's just change this to Resolute. And let's see if that works. So what was it again? 342. All right, let's see what kind of savings we get. Okay, and there you see it's down to 12.1. So that's a good amount of savings. Let's double check here, 12.1. And let's see if this still works. And it looks like it does. Cool. Okay, now let's work with a Vue CLI 3 project. In my last video, we built out this custom radio button interface using the Vue CLI. So let's go ahead and work with this. So let's go ahead and take a look at the file size here. So if you don't have this dist folder here, just make sure to do an npm run build and it will make this dist folder for you. So let me just check out the file size. And it is 315 kilobytes. So let's go ahead and see if we can use Purge CSS to save on file size. So there's two ways to do it in a Vue CLI project. So the first way is to use the Webpack plugin and sort of make it work like we did in Laravel Mix. So let's go ahead and go back into our mix file, and let me just copy this. And let's go back into here. So in a Vue CLI 3 project, there's no Webpack config file here. So how do we configure Webpack if we have some custom code we want to enter? So if you go into the Vue CLI docs, there's a section here for working with Webpack. And it says here, just make a Vue config JS file, and then you can use this code, and then you can customize Webpack however you like. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's make a file called Vue config JS, vue.config.js. Let's paste that in, and let's paste in this right here. And here is where we use Purge CSS. So as you can see, this commented out code is similar to the plugins array we have there. So let me just uncomment this. And then let me just grab all the plugins here. Like this. Let's go back here. And let me just replace this. And we don't need PHP here. And here is the code we want to scan against the final CSS output. So obviously this is Laravel based. So let's go ahead and change this to a Vue CLI 3 structure. So obviously we want to scan our .vue single file components. So if we look at the structure, let's just scan every Vue file in the source directory. So let's use this one here, and let's just change this to /source/star/star.vue. So that will scan all the Vue files. Let's do the same for JS files. And let's also add one for the HTML file. So I'm going to erase this and put /star.html. And the reason I'm doing this is because I was actually stuck on this for a while. Purge CSS was removing a lot of the CSS in the normalized CSS. That's because we need to scan this one too and look for any of the definitions here, so Purge CSS can not remove them. For example, there's some resets for the HTML tag in normalized CSS. If you don't scan this file, then it's going to remove that. So make sure you add that in your config here. And one more thing, we have to require this path here. So let me just do that quickly. So let path equals require path, and that should do it. And I think I forgot a comma here. Okay, let's see if this works. So let's do let me just stop this. So I'm going to go back into my root directory here, and I'm going to do npm run build. Sorry, I forgot to copy in that Tailwind extractor. So let's go ahead and copy that in. So all of this stuff up here. So I'm going to copy this. And just grab this with the comments as well. Let's put it here. And let me uncomment this. And let's try that again. So npm run build. Okay. There you can see the CSS file is down to 5.61 kilobytes. Let's double check that. Into our dist folder, CSS. There you go, 5.7 kilobytes. Let's double check if it still works. So I'm just going to go into the dist folder, and I'm just going to run the server here. And it still works. But now we have minified CSS that's only 5.7 kilobytes as opposed to whatever it was, 300 whatever before, and it still works. Cool. Okay, let me show you one more way to do this if you don't want to use Webpack. You can use a PostCSS plugin for Purge CSS. So let me just go back here and let me just remove all this. I'm just going to comment everything out just to make sure that it's not using Webpack. And to use a PostCSS plugin, we're going to have to make a new file. So the file is going to be PostCSSRC.js. And we have to go into our package JSON and remove this PostCSS section here. So let me just remove that. And let me add some stuff to the PostCSSRC.js. So let me just paste in. So this is pretty much the equivalent of what I just erased in the package JSON. So this, but it's using this file, and I'm using this because we're going to need this to configure Purge CSS. So it's just requiring in Tailwind and passing in the config, and auto prefixer is there by default. So let me just make sure that this still works. So I'm going to stop this, go back up, and let me just make sure it still runs properly. So this will build it, but it'll still be a large file size because we're not using Purge yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and check the file size for this. Let's go to dist CSS. Okay, so it's back to 315. So let's go ahead and use this plugin. It's called PostCSS Purge CSS. And it's pretty similar to how we use it in Webpack. So I'm just going to npm install it. And then now I am going to require it in to our PostCSS RC file. So let's put it up here. And we just have to specify the code we want to scan against our CSS. So let's copy this. Actually, let's copy this whole thing. And let's go into our code. And let me just paste this in here. And this is similar to this stuff here. So we're just specifying what we want to scan. So what do we want to scan? We can just grab these actually. So this, put that in there. And then what's next? This, let's put that in there. And then the JS files, let's put that in there. And we also have to specify the extractors thing. So let's go down here. Actually, there's no code here, so let me just put it in here. So it's just another key for extractors. And that's an array. And give it an extractor of Tailwind extractor. Sorry, this should be an object. This. And then the extensions are just HTML, JS, and Vue. Okay, let's see if this works. Let's go back into a terminal. I'm going to do npm run build. Sorry, I don't need this method here. So this is closed here. Don't need this. And let me just re-indent that. And let's try again. And once again, I forgot to paste in that Tailwind extractor. So let me just grab that real quick from here. Where is it? Right here. Let's grab that. Let's put it up here. Comment it. And let's try that again. Okay, it looks like it worked, and we're down to 5.7 kilobytes. Let's take a look. Dist CSS. Sorry, no, I meant we're down to 1 kilobyte. That's a good amount of savings. So let's just double check if it still works. So I'm just gonna go into the folder, run the server, and let's see if it still works. And it does not. It stripped out everything. Sorry, the error is here. These should have quotes. And let's try that one more time. Just stop this. npm run build. And that looks better. 5.61. Let's go into our folder, server. Let's try that again. And there we go, back to normal. And let's just double check if, yep, still it didn't take out the responsive styles, and everything works. So there you have it, guys. We've managed to use Purge CSS to greatly reduce the file size of Tailwind CSS and its output. So this is my first time using this, and it actually works really well. So I'll definitely be using this in my projects that are in production. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.